Hey Caddo Math teachers, this is Roger Vance here to start this video, the first in a series of 4 in which we address our supplemental curriculum resources that are linked throughout our scope and sequence documents. We're going to talk in this first video about Eureka Math. The other videos will deal with Illuminations from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, the Math Assessment Project, and then also Illustrative Mathematics. So I hope you'll watch those videos when you finish this one and complete the Google form that accompanies it. However, let's take a quick look at Eureka Math. Now, these videos are not meant to give you every detail. They're meant to give you just a kind of a foundation, a foundational understanding of what these resources look like. So to start with Eureka Math, let's take a look at Eureka's lesson structure. This is a nice feature in which they describe, okay, we're going to give you 4 different types of lessons throughout Eureka Math, and you see them there on your screen. Notice the icons out to the left. So now if we look at an example, here is an example from, if you look in the top right corner of your screen, you'll see this is Lesson 6. The 8.6 means 8th grade Module 6. Modules in Eureka Math are basically like we would consider to be units in most traditional curriculum resources. So they're broad scopes, but then you see that this is Lesson 6 from Module 6 of the 8th grade material. Also notice the icon out to the left there. And again, that represents this is a problem set lesson where students and teachers work through examples and complete exercises to develop or reinforce a concept. So this is kind of traditional instruction. Also notice on this front page you've got student outcomes, you've got lesson notes. These are very important, and probably the lesson notes are even more important in the case of using Eureka as a supplemental resource, because if you'll notice, it says under the lesson notes here that this lesson is the first in a set of lessons dealing with relationships between numerical variables. So it might help you out to kind of take a glance at least at the other lessons in this set of lessons and see if you want to maybe incorporate one or more of the others, or if you want to combine some of those parts into a single lesson to meet the needs of your students. So great information that's provided with each lesson in Eureka Math. You'll notice that Eureka Math lessons are almost scripted. They're not meant to be used as scripts. Those scripts are just meant there to be models for you, examples of what it could look like. And of course we want you to, because you know your students more than anyone else and you know their needs, we want you to adjust these accordingly whenever you are using them. So notice this lesson starts off with classwork, example 1. This could also be a bell ringer. Although it says spend a few minutes introducing the context, if it were a bell ringer, you probably wouldn't want to do that. So right away you can see you've got some flexibility in how you use this. But a lot of great information here. Note the scaffolding boxes out to the right. Gives some great information, oftentimes some differentiation ideas, things you might want to think about as you prepare this lesson. From this point, I'm going to show you the teacher material on the left and the student material on the right. You know, it's just going to depend on what you want to print up for your students. The student material oftentimes is going to be, you know, anywhere from 6 to 15 to 20 pages. And so you may not want to print all that. It may be something that you can put on your smartboard up on the screen up in front of the students, or just print off certain pages as you see the need. But this is a great setup for lessons, very, very structured. And you see the student page on the right pretty much follows along with the teacher material on the left. You've got the same diagrams there. It's just that basically the teacher material has all the answers and explanations. Scrolling on through this lesson, you see that there were exercises 1 through 3. They even show you the standards for mathematical practice out to the left, where it says in the blue where it says MP.7. Those are also referenced on page 1 of our scope and sequence documents. And you also see the answers in blue on the teacher material. And then there's a little pause. But it also gives time recommendations, as you may have already noted. Exercises 4 through 8, it recommends that you give that at least 6 or 8 minutes. Of course, you know, it's not always going to turn out that way. In fact, rarely. It's either going to be a little more for you or a little less, depending on the situation. As we continue to go through this lesson, you see more teacher notes on the left for the student page on the right. And it takes us all the way down through classwork exercises 1 through 8. And then you notice on the student page there's after number 8 there's example 2. And so here's the teacher page with example 2, and again some explanation, some commentary to help you to be more efficient with your planning. And then it takes us takes us to exercises 9 and 10. It recommends 5 minutes, and then there's a closing. So notice that for the student packet on the right, the only thing that's listed under their closure is the lesson summary. That's something that could be placed up on the screen or just discussed. Again, if you're printing some of this, you want to minimize the printing that you're having to do, and that's probably a page that you could leave off along with several others, depending on what you're wanting to use out of the lesson material. Almost every Eureka lesson, I think every Eureka lesson has an exit ticket. And sometimes these are one problem that can be done in less than a minute. Sometimes they're a little longer and could require 10 to 15 minutes. So you'll have to gauge that and use that as you want. I see teachers using these as homework assignments. I've seen teachers using them as traditional exit tickets, or in other ways. It could be your bell ringer the next day, something like that. So anyway, just another consistent resource that you find throughout Eureka Math. Notice in the teacher material there are solutions as always. And then there's a problem set here as well that could be used for homework or, again, just as you see the need. And I think there were 9 or 10 problems here. I'm only showing you the first problem. Okay, so that was a problem set lesson. Let's take a look at another type of lesson. This time you'll notice that I pulled this from 6th grade math, Module 4, and this is the first lesson from 6th grade Math Module 4. This logo on the left of the lesson title represents Socratic Lesson, where you are expected to lead a conversation to develop the concept of proof. So this is more of a discovery type lesson where you're not hand-holding and spoon-feeding. Again, we've got student outcomes and lesson notes there, but it starts with classwork again, and here they call it a fluency exercise. Now, what you're going to need to pay attention here, the reason I pulled this example is that in this exercise, Eureka Math uses the tape diagram model. So if you're not familiar with that, then you probably don't want to use this activity until you are. And so just be aware of those kinds of things, that you may see some strategies, some instructional tools, some models that you are not familiar with. And so again, I want to encourage you, don't just assume, oh, well, these are scripted lessons, I can just print this off and do it tomorrow. It's going to take more than that, as every lesson does. Then, for the Socratic lesson, you're going to see a pretty detailed discussion time. In this case, 15 minutes, that will lead into some activities for the students to complete. So that's a very quick overview of a Socratic lesson. The next one we want to look at is actually the very next lesson from 6th grade math. This was 6th grade Module 4 again, and this is lesson 2. The last one, the Socratic lesson, was lesson 1. And if you remember our icons, this is the exploration lesson. And in this case, you're going to see some small group work. So again, student outcomes, lesson notes, and begins with classwork. And they actually tell you opening 2 minutes. In most cases, 2 minutes usually is 5 or more. But and again, you see the mathematical practice standard there on the left, and you've got an opening exercise. Once again, these lessons are back to back, so you can imagine they're continuing the tape diagram usage there. And so you'd want to be familiar with that before using this particular Eureka lesson. And you'll see other things in Eureka lessons that may not be as familiar to you. So again, I'm saying this over and over, but I just want to caution you not to say, oh, well, these are scripted lessons, I'll print it and I'll be good to go tomorrow. Just not always the case, in fact, rarely the case. I taught out of this material for a year in 8th grade math and Algebra 1, and although I really liked the mathematics, the planning at first was a little bit challenging because it was something I wasn't used to, and I ended up most of the time doing quite a bit of modification to the lessons. Maintain the same basic structure, but sometimes would change problems, change time frames, that sort of thing. So just want to make sure we're clear on, although this is structured and scripted, you still have to prepare and plan. So in this particular lesson, remember, we are looking at the exploration model, the exploration lesson structure. And here we've got a discussion again, and it says optional. But what you're leading up to is, through this discussion and questions that they suggest, you're leading up to an exploratory challenge. And this is typical of an exploration lesson, where you're going to give them this exploratory challenge, And this particular lesson calls for students to work in pairs. Again, that's totally your discretion on how you set up your groups. But it is important that you do this in small groups. That's a big point of the whole lesson, is to have students work together, to feed off each other, to struggle together, and it's just a great way to learn. All right, and then finally we'll go to the last lesson sample here. I've pulled one from geometry, and if you look again in the top right corner, you'll see that this is lesson 4 from the geometry curriculum from Eureka Math. And if you remember, the icon here represents modeling, and the lesson title here, construct a perpendicular bisector. So the idea is that there's going to be some modeling going on from the teacher and possibly from the students modeling for each other. So again, student outcomes, lesson notes. In the lesson notes here, it's important to recognize that you're talking about constructions, and it may give you some more information as to some resources that you would need. There's also a rubric that students use for themselves in this lesson, and that's described in the lesson notes. So here's the problem set that they start with in this lesson, and as you see it, I've got this is all from the student page here, and they are bisecting angles. And if you see in the instructions, it says choose one method below to check your problem set. And then there's an accompanying rubric there you see in table format for them to do a lot of this work together in their group without too much help from the teacher. In the teacher material, you'll find some actual scripting of the discussion. So again, it's great to have that, and you may, in this case, read it out, use it as your own words, but don't just go into it without preparing ahead of time. So that's a quick look at our 4 lesson structures that we find in Eureka: problem set, Socratic, exploration, and modeling. I hope that helps you out in understanding these lessons a lot better. Keeping in mind that these are supplemental resources. It's a great resource. The mathematics in Eureka is solid. It's very aligned. It's not completely 100% aligned. I haven't found anything yet that is. However, it's one of the more aligned resources that we have to our state standards and our state assessment. So please complete the Google form that was attached with this email, or however this video came to you, and hope to see you on the next video when we talk about NCTM's Illuminations lesson plans. Thanks for watching.